half of sales is understanding what the other person needs or wants and what they're trying to communicate.
Like, don't burn the bridge. Close the door
and be the bigger person.
Make sure that
it.
They'll be happy to see you knocking on their door again the next 100%. Time if you need them.
And now I must tell them, not only are you not going to make money, but you probably paid 25% over the market value. Be on time to your commitments. Makes a big difference. Most people don't care, but the people who do care really care.
For me,
never heard anyone sneeze on a podcast before.
Yeah,
why is that?
So, welcome guys. What brings us here today, Taylor? I guess I really want to find out more about sales because of new things that are happening in my life. Realizing mostly that I could probably do better in kind of convincing people on multiple levels in starting this business. Not only the sales end goal of actually creating revenue from customers and things, but I also want to learn more on how to persuade people to partner with me. How am I going to hire people eventually? Like all of those things. And I feel like your expertise, not only being a real estate agent and selling on other platforms as well, but also just being a business owner too and dealing with people every day. I feel like you will have quite a bit of valuable insight for me.
Let's hope. This podcast has kind of been overdue. We've been saying we want to do this for a while, and it's kind of evolved into, okay, cool, let's keep it specific. Chat about sales and different ways that sales is part of anyone's growth. Really, I think anything you're doing requires sales to some degree. No one operates in a vacuum. So, you always need other people. You need other people to be on the same page as you. And, we kind of touched on it earlier that sales is ultimately just about conveying the right ideas, making sure, that idea lands and is taken in the way you want it to be taken in. It's really just communicating in a way that's kind of appropriate. That's going to get you the outcome you want, I guess. So maybe give us a bit of background about the thing you want to start.
Yeah, so I'm trying to start a travel company basically in South Africa.
Do or do not, there is no try.
That is true. I am doing it. I am in the process of doing it. It's still very early stages, obviously. I'm kind of at a point now where I need to start thinking about how I'm going to approach potential partners. Even before I even touch on my client base or anything like that. One of the things that I'm actually wondering more is what do I need to prepare for these people? What do I need to know myself about what I'm doing to be able to sell effectively to people? Because it's obviously not something that I've done before. I can't show people like, oh yeah, I've made this travel company before, so this one's going to be sick. You should join me. So it's a little bit difficult trying to build that trust with people.
So a brief on what the business does in terms of travel company?
Yeah, so the kind of idea started with realizing that when people travel in general, you find a lot of people all over the place saying, oh no, like I don't want to do that, it's too touristy, or this isn't the right experience for me. And people actually generally struggle to go abroad and feel like they've lived a genuine experience in that country.
Like an authentic.
Like what I want is people to be able to come do these trips with me and go home saying that they've seen South Africa. Like for all of everything that it is, basically.
100%, the good and the bad.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I think I'm entering the market, is kind of giving people an alternative to just the normal Cape Town, Kruger kind of itinerary that generally gets sold to them. Because South Africa has so much more to offer, really.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there like me who also want to have a little bit more of an adventurous holiday, where they kind of test their own limits of comfort and experience.
And learning, being in new environments teaches you new things about yourself.
That's true. And
I think travel has kind of changed, especially as people kind of our age and younger start entering that market as such, where in our parents' days they would want to go to a nice resort, you know, as
Yeah.
few moving parts as possible,
Yeah.
all inclusive, the drinks, the food, everything.
Yeah.
You know, the shuttle will take you from the resort to the tourist attraction, and that's
Exactly.
about it. But
Yeah.
I
You
think
feel like
that's-
you're herding, you know,
Exactly.
you feel like a little sheep, showing you a very curated experience.
exactly.
So a part of what I would be wanting to sell is actually giving people a lot more freedom on their itineraries too. So although I'm giving them the security of this trip that is planned and things, I wanted to feel like they have a lot of control over what happens on their day to day, and how much or how little they actually experience is up to them.
Makes sense.
But on that note, you mentioned now people who, you know, prefer to go to the resorts and things like that. In terms of now selling to people, obviously the easiest people to sell to would be the ones who are keen on having an adventurous holiday. But I'm of the opinion that this kind of holiday would be more beneficial than your resort planned holiday. So do you think there's any ways that you can actually enter that market as well and tell people this is actually a better alternative? You're going to end up feeling more fulfilled from
Interesting.
this than...
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, I don't know anything really, so I'll speculate. Why not? And I think it's funny that the person who most needs a trip like that is the person who would be least likely to want to do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it would require some very clever marketing to just get that person, you know, that avatar or that type of person, you know, to even have a conversation with you. I think would be a little bit difficult. But if you had a bunch of, you know, testimonials or something from someone who that person could that person, ill-defined as it is, you know, some testimonials of someone who is similar enough to them, and they could be like, okay, cool, well, other people have done it, and you know, that person is also 45 from America, and they had a good experience. I'm 45, I'm from America, I would have, you know, like, then maybe you can do it. But I think that type of person is probably very sensitive to uncertainty, right? Probably would rather avoid uncertainty and just have and I think I'm of the opinion, and this is probably just my, you know, what I would prefer myself, is something where there isn't that much certainty. You know, I'm certain insofar as I have a good guide, being you, or you know, someone who's actually going to look after me. That certainty is good, but the details, you know, maybe I'll just have to trust the process a little bit and see, you know, when if I travel somewhere, I would want to go and eat where the locals eat. I don't want to go eat in a hotel. So
whereas you get some Americans who travel the world but then go eat at McDonald's kind of thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Starbucks, the American embassy, as they call it in Europe. So yeah, I think it's, you know, you're probably selling a bit of an uphill battle there. I think it probably makes more sense to let the people come to you, as it were. You know, you put out marketing that's representative of the brand, and the right people will come to you and probably close themselves, because, you know, chances are they've been looking for something like this. You know, maybe they wanted to travel to South Africa and their auntie said to them, listen, it's dangerous, you can't do, you know, all of, probably true, a lot of them. But, you know, you probably have the solution that they need. So in some sense, it'll sell itself. You know, you're going to be in, and again, this is something we touched on, that sales and consulting is not really that different. They're going to have a bunch of questions. You're going to do your best to answer it so that they feel certain, and so that they feel like there's no gray areas. Their expectations are managed. You know, all of that is part and parcel of sales. I think that'll be very easy, because you know, they want you to give them the right info. They want you to convince them, because then they can make their decision.
You're not starting on the back foot.
Exactly.
With your clients.
Especially if, you know, they reach out to you and you can say to them, okay, cool, you know, you've got cool videos and that kind of thing to give people a bit of an idea, and you know, they can reach out to you with more info, book a call. And I think that's probably how you'd want to do something, especially because ideally you want to be in control of the whole package for them. In control insofar as, like, you're booking them into good places, you're booking them into, you know, areas that are going to be safe enough. You are, you're going to be the one taking them between the different places and setting up camps and
and
doing all of that kind of thing. It makes sense for you to tell them, okay, cool, look, go with me. I'm the person who's going to solve all of these problems. You've got 100 problems you have to think about if you travel. I can bring it down to 2 or 3. That's going to be kind of the selling point.
Look at the value that I'm adding.
Exactly. Day, right? And also, if you go online, you're going to look at the top 10 places to visit South Africa. You're going to see 4 of them, and you're only going to hear people with German and American accents when you get there, right? But for you, you can take them to a Shisanyama car wash, right? Like, they don't even know what that is. How could they, go, So I think it's incredible value. It's just a matter of demonstrating to them that you are the one who has that value.
Give them that experience.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. But it's an interesting thing about kind of figuring out where your value is. Because I feel like I have a very strong idea of what I want the company to be. But when it comes to using my words about it, that's where I struggle. So I struggle in most areas of my life in terms of like portraying
ideas across.
Getting what's in my head out into the world.
100%.
So do you have any tips on, because I'm sure maybe it's something that came naturally to you, maybe it is a natural talent, but how would someone begin to develop that kind of a skill?
I think I do maybe have some kind of, what do they call it, like a proclivity. I've always been very diplomatic. I always feel like I've understood people well, and I think that half of sales is kind of understanding, or maybe even more, is understanding what the other person needs or wants and what they're trying to communicate. And understanding that they're probably not great at communicating. So there's a bit of reading in between the lines that you have to do. So I think putting the focus on the prospect, on the client, on the other person is a good way to firstly just slow the conversation down, give yourself time to think. I've found, especially recently entering a new field of sales, being online closing essentially, and the dynamic's very different to that versus in person. So what I've realized is that I can still maintain the control of the conversation, the framing of the conversation. And if I feel like I'm stuck, I will rather get the prospect to talk, right? You tell me why you're looking at this, right? If all of a sudden I'm at a loss for words, you can very quickly take it to a question and say, well, why here and not somewhere else, for example? Why South Africa and not Kenya? Why South Africa and not where the rest of the tourists go, kind of thing? I'm a piano. So sorry, I maybe got away from the question a little bit, but I think focus on the other person is really the tips. Try and understand them more. When you feel like your flow is not there, get them to talk more. That would be advice there. In terms of practices, like practical advice, I think that the more people you talk to and the more conversations you have, the better you will get at actually conveying the right idea. And I think also in terms of conveying ideas, not saying something is almost as important as saying something. Right? So rather don't put out too much information or too many points, or try and get all of your ideas out. Focus on the 1 or 2 that are very important. And again, if you're paying attention to the prospect and listening to what they have to say, and uncovering kind of their needs or what they want to get out of it, you'll know what exactly. So, and people also love talking, like most of the time. Right. So I think from practical advice, that's probably
And then also another thing I was thinking about is, so for example, I'm going to have to partner up with companies who rent adventure vehicles. So you'll obviously have a pitch in mind when you're speaking to these people for a potential partnership and things. If I've got, let's say, 5 options, and there's one that I really want to go for, should I speak to them first? Should I speak to them last? Should I have the same pitch for all of them? Yeah,
It's a good question. Well, I guess it doesn't matter really in the scheme of things,
Okay.
because if the goal is to, sorry, I'll just wait for a
It's
car
the
to come
cars,
past.
yeah.
If the goal is to get that one company, then the other four don't really matter. So maybe what I would say is then use the other four as practice.
Yeah.
See what kind of questions they might ask, what kind of problems they might have, because I'm sure they have similar operations and similar issues.
Sure.
So I would say, yeah, maybe use the other. That's not necessarily. Maybe it's better to just start with the one and the other four become redundant. But if you're trying to sharpen your sales skills, then probably makes sense to do 5 times as many conversations. Just purely from the point of view of building the skill. So yeah, I guess I would start with the ones I don't really care about.
Yeah.
The ironic thing is, probably the ones you don't care about are the ones who will make you the offer.
Yeah. So then you might be sitting with 3 offers or something like that.
But none of them that you want necessarily.
Yeah.
I heard a quote, and I couldn't attribute it. I don't know where I heard it or whose idea it was, but they basically said that the person who has the edge in a negotiation is the one who cares the least.
Okay.
The person who's most able to walk away.
Okay.
Right. And I think anyone who's ever dealt with an estate agent, a bad estate agent, an average estate agent, I don't know what the parameters are, but I think people can sense when this person really needs to make the sale, and straight away it closes them down.
Really?
Like if you walked into a house that you immediately didn't like, and you said, you gave all these indications, whether you said it openly or whatever the case was, you can tell if someone doesn't like something.
Okay.
And someone who's desperate for a sale will tell you all of the things that they think you should know.
Why they need to buy it
exactly
now.
Why you should buy this. All the tactics and all of that kind of thing.
That's where the bad salesman comes in, because it's something that I've always said is that I really don't like salesmen.
Yeah,
and
no one does.
It's because of that feeling that you get. And now over the years, I've met a few people who have sold me things and think like, wow, that guy was actually really good.
100%.
But yeah, I guess it must tie in with that kind of energy that they give, where you know that they don't have your interests in mind.
Exactly that.
You can tell that they're just trying to sell you because they're trying to sell something.
Because they need it, exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that works for some people in whatever limited, short-term success you get doing that kind of thing. But even if you can get someone to buy, if you're selling a cheap product, you're selling whatever those guys sell at the mall. I don't know, insoles for your shoes.
Yeah.
Someone might just buy something so that they can get out of it and not have to tell you no. If it's a 500 Rand thing, maybe I'll use it, I'll give it to someone else, whatever. But it doesn't work when you're selling a property.
No.
Right? If you walk into a house and you don't like it, there is nothing I could tell you that would make you buy it. And the same is true that if we walked into a house and you loved it, and your wife loved it, and your kids loved it, I would not be able to stop you from buying that property. There's nothing I could tell you that would change your mind because you already love it. I could switch my phone off. You would make a plan. You would get hold of the seller. You would get hold of another agent. You would do something so that you could buy that house. So a big transaction like that is less about selling and more about just making all the information clear so that the person is comfortable to make a decision.
So you're kind of just informing them about
100% and facilitating. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And sometimes people will ask my opinion, and in the interest of maintaining that relationship and having that client in the future, I'll try and be as honest with them as I can. And a lot of things are opinion based, but if I feel like something is a bad deal, I'm kind of morally obliged to tell that person, because when I was starting out, I had situations and I saw situations. Sorry, I'm derailing, but anyway,
no.
I saw and had situations where someone came in, there was a lot of hype, and not much product, and people bought what was being sold to them, in the sense that it was speculative, right? If you buy this property now, in 3 years' time, it's going to be worth this much. Look at these other properties we had that this happened. And, and people paid crazy amounts of money. 25% above what the property's worth, for example, right?
Yeah,
And it's all good and well, you know, and I had maybe one instance like that where someone saw the property, liked the property, were willing to pay the asking price. I thought it was a bad deal, but I didn't say anything.
Okay.
2 years later, the client calls me and says, hey, I want to sell my property. How much is it worth?
Yeah.
Now I must tell them, not only are you not going to make money, but you probably paid 25% over the market value.
The market value, right.
And now, why would that person let me sell that property? They wouldn't, and they didn't.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, and the other people, other agents who did the same things, you know, I don't think they really cared, because for them, they did the deal. It's all about the deal that's in front of you. But for me,
it's
I
about
try
the
and
relationship.
100%, because, you know, most of my business comes from referrals.
Yeah.
Repeat clients. That's really, you know, I think what's really valuable in sales, and why sales can compound, is if you maintain relationships and, you know, you always put the other person first, people will gravitate to you. And I mean, in my limited experience,
Always with the piano.
in my limited experience, it's worked for me. And I mean, different things work for different people.
Yeah.
But I think the days of the, you know, killer closer shark, in the days of the internet and where your reputation is a lot more open, things are a lot more transparent, people can talk and communicate a lot easier, I think those days are gone. I think relationship selling is more important, and selling in a way that you actually care about that person to some degree.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to leave them with a shit deal.
Okay.
So yeah, I've kind of derailed, but I
No,
thought
not
that
at
was...
all. I've got a few follow-up questions for that, because so I feel like I'm fairly personable as a person in general. I tend to get along with people. Do you think that kind of mentality will carry me far enough in being able to
Easy.
to get people to trust me and things?
Easy.
Just rely more on what I'm innately good at, rather than trying to become the salesman.
Definitely. I think you spot on. And I'll use a recent example that I had now that I learned, and I mentioned that I've not transitioned, but I've also started selling online. And the offer that I'm selling is quite technical. It's basically a scaling solution, a marketing solution for online businesses.
Okay.
And there's a lot of moving parts, and it's very complicated. And the people that I'm selling to are founders of businesses, or CMOs, marketing directors, people who understand what I'm selling fundamentally better than me.
Sure.
So the advice that the CEO of the company that I work for gave me was, if you don't have the technical know-how, you have to focus on, firstly, rapport. In other words, building trust, building a relationship, even though it's only an hour-long Zoom call. There's many ways to build rapport.
Being on time for it.
That's 100%. There you are. You're already on the back foot if you don't arrive on time. Guys, be on time to your commitments. It makes a big difference. Most people don't care, but the people who do care really care. And chances are those are the people who you're going to be expecting opportunities from. Side note, but a good point. So building rapport and building that relationship, even if it's the first 10 minutes of the call, you know, the CEO said, like, unless they've laughed at something you've said, you can't move on from that point. There's no rapport.
Okay.
So focus on building the relationship, and then once you have that rapport, focus on the pain points, right? So as much as we sell the solution, someone who doesn't have that technical knowledge needs to just focus on the pain points and less about the technicalities of the solution. Focus on the pain points and the emotions of it.
Okay.
Right? How would you feel? How do you feel now? How would you feel once the problem is solved?
Okay.
Right. And in your case, this holiday the holiday you would be selling someone is right now you feel anxious, not certain. Maybe you feel like when you arrive, you're going to get a surprise. You're going to feel stupid. Your friends are going to laugh at you. Your auntie's going to say, I told you so. Right? There's all of these things that... And if you can just bring it down to, okay, you're going to get on the plane, you're going to feel certain, you're going to know that I'm waiting at the airport for you. You're going to know that I'm not taking you into the slums.
Without a guide.
Without a guide, yeah. I mean, go to, like, there are places in town that we visit all the time that are safe
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we've
But you
never
wouldn't know if you weren't a tourist.
exactly. So
Yeah.
so you know, all of these things, and to maybe boil that down, Alex Hormozy, it's always Alex Hormozy, has a quote that says, "Sell the holiday, not the plane ticket."
Okay.
Don't worry about the details, the logistics. People will ask about that, but they'll only ask about it after they're closed.
Right. Once they've already paid for the
Exactly.
thing,
Then they want to
how's
know,
it gonna
okay, I
happen?
thought about this. So don't worry about the technicalities of this is what will happen. And then first we go here, then we go here. You focus on, we'll start here, this is how you'll feel. We'll go to this
Okay.
place, this is how other people felt.
Yeah.
I took someone here and this is what they said about
I
us.
see.
Rather than, you know, those kind of details that are important, but
yeah.
not in the selling process as
Okay.
such. As
I
long
get
as
you.
they feel like you have answers to those questions that will come up eventually,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. I think that's probably at the process that I'm at now, is building all of those hows, trying to figure
100%.
that out. And maybe you're right. Maybe I am focusing a little bit too much on that.
I think so. And
Yeah.
and like you said, I mean, as someone who is agreeable, I think we're both agreeable in you know, that first impression of us would be like, okay, this is a nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely something you can leverage, and something that has helped me, where I'll give you an example, you know, to kind of touch back on the long-term plays, long-term thinking, relationship buildings, where someone has done something that's pissed me off, and it's very difficult for me to voice that or to say, listen, what you did was wrong and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
So I tend to, you know, I'll talk to the person about it and be like, listen, you know, maybe that wasn't cool, or why'd you do that, or you know, nicely.
Yeah.
And by the end of the call, the person who has screwed me over or whatever, either they didn't realize the consequences of what they were doing, or they were just emotional when they made that decision. And a lot of the times you can get off that call, and as long as you haven't like insulted them or told them they're an idiot, or you know, all of those things that when we're in the shower having arguments we want to tell people.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, for better or worse, it's difficult for me to be a dick. But there's been so many instances where, because I took the high road, even, you know, the high road as such, you know, I was a nicer person, still made the information available. By the end of that call, that person almost feels like they owe you something, right?
Okay, interesting.
Where, shit, maybe I didn't need to do that, or maybe that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
But next time when their cousin wants to sell the property, they call me. And, you know,
Okay.
some
I see what you're saying.
so that kind of thing happens a lot. And it made me kind of grateful for this handicap that's being too nice, right? Being too nice is a handicap. But as with most things, there's a benefit and a downside,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, just taking that long-term approach.
It's probably not, maybe not the agreeableness as such, because either way it does affect you. You just don't really like to deal with it in the moment, because it's the emotional response, right?
Yeah,
So
100%.
having that time away to come back and sort
Definitely.
that out probably helps a lot.
And I think there's been 2 times where I had let my emotions sort of spill out in the moment, and both times I regretted it, because you know, you sort of, and you also told these things like stand up for yourself and speak your mind and whatever. And yes, there's definitely, but as someone who aspires to stoicism and you know, to someone who engages with Stoic philosophy, that's true, but you don't want to do it because you're emotional.
Yeah, but that process between the emotional reaction and the like processing it needs to happen quicker if you want to stand up for yourself in the moment.
Definitely. And if I feel
which
like...
is the hard part.
Which is the hard part.
Yeah.
So if I feel like I really want to say something, but I am not emotionally sober, probably let me see how I feel tomorrow would be my go-to. And yeah, it can be awkward, you know, call someone out of the blue and say, look, listen, this is why I'm calling, because of this, that happened. But again, people respect you a lot more for it. And yeah, anyway, again, bit of a side note.
Kind of on a similar note about building relationships and things, I doubt very much that I'll have many customers that will be return customers. It's people, especially if you're selling South Africa as a package to them, they're not necessarily in their lifetime going to want to come back to South
Sure,
Africa.
sure.
Cross that off the list.
Sure.
But obviously, I agree that like building a relationship with these people is important. But how important is it really if you're not going to see them again either?
Interesting.
Because once they're there, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
now they're in for the ride.
100%. And
I suppose they could go home and tell their friends never go to South Africa with this company or whatever.
I mean, so with like your lifetime value of a customer is going to be the same as or similar to one order.
Mm-hmm.
Right? However much your one order is probably how much the lifetime value of that specific customer will be.
Yeah.
So definitely I think your personality would not allow you to send someone home unhappy. Like you would go the extra mile to make it up to them, because you wouldn't, like, I just know how you are. You wouldn't want to have like unnecessary beef and people being upset with you and whatever. So I know you're not asking that question from a practical standpoint.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that with a holiday like this, people are going to post it on Instagram. People are going to put it on social media. People are going to have lang stories to tell their friends and family and whatever.
So in other words, the happier they are, the easier it is for them to be a salesman for you.
They're an advert, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, you also, after the fact, you want, a month later, give them a call. Hey, how's it going? What's it like settling back? What stuck with you after this time? Would you mind giving us a testimonial?
Okay,
all of these
like
after sale things.
It's still part of the relationship, right?
Definitely. And that's going to be a big part of where you'll get business from, is people testimonials. Oh, fucking Nancy from Florida came out on one of the holidays and, sounds like she had a good time. I'm a similar kind of person. Yeah. So that'll definitely be important. And
maybe also the first people I'll go to if we start expanding into Southern Africa or something.
Yeah. Hey, you want to do the same thing in Botswana?
Yeah.
Upsell for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think people think it's cool to burn bridges. Like, I don't know what that's really about. Maybe it makes people feel independent and empowered and whatever. But I don't really.
Who thinks it's cool to burn bridges? What do you mean?
I think as a culture, I don't know. Maybe as a like something that's emerging from this new culture is like, cut them off. Like, just.
Because my opinion on that, I agree. There are some people you need to cut off in your life, right? Or there's jobs that you need to leave, circumstances you need to get away from, but never close a door on a bad note. Like, don't burn the bridge. Close the door
and be the bigger person.
Make sure that they'll be happy to see you knocking on the door again the next 100%. Time if you need them.
And also, like, dude, like, imagine someone does something you don't like, and you fly off the handle and.
Good.
Okay, we're all good. And you fly off the handle and you're overly emotional about something and you swear at them and whatever. And then you have to go to the mall and hide your face next time you see them.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you're always being the bigger person, you're never going to you're never going to worry about bumping into someone or, just how someone starts dating your cousin. And now on Christmas you have to spend time with them. Like, you never know what can happen. So my thing has always been, I'm going to do the bigger thing. If you don't like me, that's fine. It's obviously not about me, because I know I always did the bigger person.
Or even if you did momentarily do the bad thing, like acknowledging that, being 100%. The bigger person and apologizing.
100%.
It's interesting. Dynamics is always it's a difficult thing to navigate, and everyone seems to have their own way of doing things as well. But so it's hard to say that that's the right way too. If you want to go through your life shutting people down who don't agree with you, like, sure,
100%.
It could work, but it's definitely not the way I want to operate in the world. So
for sure. Not to say there's a right or a wrong way, but I think for people that are maybe wired like us, however that happened, however that came about, I think that's, it double down on what works. Like, that's been the thing for me, leverage the fact that when I meet someone, I can't help but be nice. Like, it's lucky that I'm in a relationship-based business, because I actually really enjoy bringing people's walls down, Like, if I meet someone and they're a grumpy dick, like, I kind of take a perverse pleasure in knowing that, like, okay, cool, right now you don't want to talk to me, but in an hour and a half's time, when we're done with this meeting and series of viewings, we're kind of going to be mates.
Okay.
You know, like, I do get a little perverse, yeah, exactly. I do get a little perverse pleasure out of it.
Okay.
And that's like something that will always, as you move along in a journey, whatever it might be, in the beginning there'll be things that are scary and like, but you know, I wish that guy didn't I wish that guy didn't ask the question that I didn't have the answer to.
Right.
But as you go through more and more of those, you'll be excited when someone does that, because you're like, oh shit, what can I think of now?
Okay.
You know, like what?
Because now you've sharpened the knife in a way, and now you get to use it.
100%.
Okay,
So
that's interesting.
You know, I've even had like negotiations on commission, for example, where you know, I've brought an offer and now it's time to essentially work out what I'm going to be getting paid from this deal. And in the past, it would be so distressing when I'd have to sit with a disagreeable person who would, you know, knock my commission down, and I felt like there's nothing I could do about it, versus the stage that I am now, or you know, maybe just being a little bit more advanced in my career, seeing like, okay, cool, you know, this is making me better at negotiating in general, and the deals that I'm doing are only going to get bigger. So it's better that I sharpen it now on these, in relative terms, lower consequence deals. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's also, I think it's also like one of the biggest things in sales is mindset and not being reactive and not taking things personally. I think that's a big thing, and that's part of why we called our business Stoic Realty, because you really do have to be stoic. You know, not that you have to, but your life will be easier. You'll things will upset you less. Yeah,
which is the big thing. Sure. Then we're talking about commission and negotiating and things like that. I'm not sure if you have any knowledge on this, but the like psychology of pricing things, right? Do you have any inputs on that? Like, I know like a few basics, you know, you don't want to enter the market at too much of a low price because people are not going to think it's valuable. You don't want to go too high. But like what other tips on the psychology of pricing things do you have? What knowledge do you have in there about that?
I think most of it is going to be kind of recycled from other people. I don't think anything that I'm going to say will be an original idea as such. But something that's very useful is price anchoring, you know, to say, for example, just you know, relating to me, if someone says, what's your commission rate, I will say, well, other agencies will charge you 7.5% plus VAT. Haven't answered your question, but I've anchored at something. 7.5 plus VAT, which works out to what, 8 point something percent. Once you put the VAT on top, you know, it and I'm not lying, agencies do charge that. But I know that because I am essentially running a very lean business, it's just me and a partner and one employee. I know that I have wiggle room in that. But if I can frame it at 7.5%, you know, that now it becomes a negotiation based on at least that figure. Right. So price anchoring is one thing. I think also in terms of, like you said, you know, not too high, not too low. I heard something that said, and I don't know what this is based on, that said that when a recession happens, it's always the middle that gets squashed out. Okay. So whether that's the middle class, middle of the range products, whatever the case may be, that those are the first thing to fall away, kind of thing. Okay. And that kind of makes sense, because people with money always have money. People who don't have money, or people in the middle, are at risk of, you know, not having the kind of money, so they'll just cut their spending down. Right. Rich people won't. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense, and I think also price, you definitely want to be on the higher end of something rather than the lower end, because
unless you're working at scale,
if you're selling a commodity, you know, something that's just a definition for someone who might not know exactly what a commodity is. A commodity is something where if I have one and you have another, there's no difference in the quality of it. Okay. Like a piece of coal is a commodity because coal is coal.
Coal is coal.
If I have a kilo of coal, you have a kilo of coal, it's not premium coal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's purely price-based.
Okay.
But something like a holiday is not at all a commodity. There's so many different perspectives someone would have on it, so many different unique selling points. There's so much about it that you can't really put a price on.
Yeah.
So for something like that, it makes sense to price it a bit higher. And, you know, I think the opportunity cost, this comes from a book called Alchemy, which is about marketing. And the opportunity cost for something like this is, if I'm going to South Africa with you, it means I'm not going anywhere else with anyone else. So someone would look at something that costs, just for example, $1,000 and say, okay, it's cheap, but something about that scares me because I want to have a good time on holiday. I'm already spending another $1,000 to fly there.
Yeah.
You know, all of the other stuff. I have to get a house sitter. I have to put my dogs in a kennel. I have to do all of these things where $1,000 doesn't seem like a lot when you compare all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas if
And
you're
you
selling
don't want to skimp on the actual thing that you're out to do.
the thing that you're out
right?
to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at it then at $5,000, the person is thinking, well, this guy obviously knows what he's doing. It's obviously, you know, something that I'm going to enjoy, hence why I would pay $5,000 for it. So you're also going to get people who don't really want stress. So they're going to look at it and say, $5,000 to not have to stress, cool. Versus someone who says $1,000, you know, they probably the kind of person who tries to save money everywhere.
Right.
They're probably the kind of person who's going to negotiate with you further on that. Could you do $750?
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of conversations that open up. Doesn't leave a good feeling for anyone. And, you know, that person also won't enjoy it because they feel like, you know, I chose the budget version because that's all I could do. And I got the budget version. They've already have that, like, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy that they kind of already have decided that's what's going to happen. So I think pricing something higher ultimately makes it more effective. And they did a study on this, funnily enough, with, I think it was like pharmaceuticals. And if I gave you one tablet that cost, you know, 100 Rand versus another tablet that cost 150, even if the tablet was the same, the more expensive one would have a better effect.
Okay.
Because you had told yourself, well, this is more expensive, it must be better.
Yeah.
Right.
More science has gone into
Exactly.
it. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's something to think about as well, that the way you price it is going to attract the type of person.
Yeah.
And you probably want someone who is willing to pay the price to ensure they have a good experience versus someone who already thinks it could be a 50-50 as soon as they commit to it.
You see, the thing is obviously you want to sell at a higher price because it implies value, but the whole brand has to portray that image as well,
100%.
right? You can't have this ridiculously priced holiday when the website's buggy and it doesn't work. So yeah, a lot of things need to happen first, right? So if you want to get that value out there into the world, you need to have good Instagram presence, a really good website, and then obviously then the price point.
And the person, you know, when they get on that call, they need to feel like you're professional and respectable and going to look after them. And everything, if they get a little hint that something's not right.
Yeah. So I guess a good first step for me would just...
Never heard anyone sneeze on a podcast before.
Yeah,
why is that?
Anyway. They cut it out. They cut it out. Yeah, what was I saying?
Sorry.
I think a good starting point, I guess, for me then would be just to figure out what I'm actually selling, first of all, and really get that down.
Keep in mind, I don't know what I'm talking about, but my advice, ungrounded as it may be, would be to start with something very, very specific, to say, we are the only tour and travel company in South Africa that does, you know, this route. Kruger, God's Window, Joburg, whatever. You know, make it very, very specific and only sell that.
Okay.
And then when someone inquires and you get on a call with them and they say, oh, well, you know, Kruger's cool, but we also want to see Durban, can we change it? Obviously you're going to say yes. But at least you'll have a very coherent idea of what you're selling, the outcomes you're selling. You know, it's going to be a lot clearer rather than what do you want to do? Right, because that's the whole reason they're coming to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously you can change the offer on a case-by-case basis, but I think if you have something that's very narrowly defined, very clear, and you have cool footage and content to back that up, I think that probably makes the most sense, even if it's just for the initial hook. But once you have that, the person can do whatever they want. Then, you know, and if it is someone who would prefer the certainty of a route that you've done many times before, then they'll do that and you'll get that impression from them. But if it's someone who's like, you know, I actually did go to South Africa before, but I feel like I didn't get to see it properly. I heard about this. I wanted to see this. Then you'll say, okay, cool. Yeah, no stress. We'll change it. Like, we'll keep this structure and take away that and add this. And, you know, then you'll be able to give the person what they want. But at least if it's more narrowly defined and you know what you're selling and you know what messaging you're crafting, it'll be a lot easier. You know, like if you have lots of different packages and products and whatever, you kind of giving yourself too many options.
And
I think
broadens the target markets as well.
Broadens the marketing scope as well.
Yeah.
You know, now you have to get footage from Durban, footage from Cape Town, footage from Kruger.
Yeah.
But if you have this one route, it's a lot easier to get all of that marketing material for it, right? And to say to the people, we're staying at this lodge or this campsite, rather than like, okay, you want to see the region, I'll have a look for you. Like,
Okay.
no, this is what we're doing. These are the options.
Yeah.
If you really want to change it, okay, let me have a look and see how it impacts what. You really don't have to give people straight answers on a discovery call.
Yeah.
That would be my thinking. But again, keep in mind, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think you know more than most would, I guess.
I guess. I mean, just we kind of touched on this earlier, like speaking to people. I was just in London now and speaking to people. So many people are interested in South Africa.
Okay.
And everybody says, you know, like you can kind of see people's eyes light up, like, you know, where you from? I'm from Joburg, like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've heard so much about Cape Town. Usually that's what they say. I've heard so much about Cape Town, don't really know much about Joburg.
Yeah.
And if they do know something about Joburg, it's normally bad.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's the thing about South Africa at large, really. It's quite shrouded in mystery or not in misinformation. I think a lot of the bad things that people know about South Africa
are true. Yeah.
But
they don't have all of the nuance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is an incredible country, man. Like,
it is.
Having traveled for so long, and then coming back to SA, really opened my eyes as to what a world-class place this actually is.
100%.
The diversity on all levels, really.
Variety, diversity.
So that's basically, I guess, I need to sort out how to bring that message across to people. Like, come here, I'm going to show you what South Africa is about, right?
So that's, you know, part of what I mentioned earlier, where it's also just as important what you leave out as what you actually tell them. Not that you're withholding information, but you're withholding information that's not applicable to them. And, you know, for example, like when I was speaking to people and when people asked, like, what's Joburg like? I would say I would try and keep it as short as possible and not be like, you know, it's cool, we have the suburbs and, you know, like trying to explain too much. I would say something like, Cape Town's very gentrified, Joburg is not. Right. Yeah. And then that leaves room for them to say, oh, so, you know, they can ask a question that they're interested by. Oh, so, you know, what do you do when you come across a bad area or something? You're like, no, nothing. I mean, that doesn't mean just because you're in a bad area you're in danger. And vice versa doesn't mean if you're in a good area that you can be guaranteed no bad things will happen, right? And, you know, for you as someone who's essentially inviting people to these like more off the beaten track type places, it's going to be very important for you to be able to convey, you know, like why Joburg's exciting, because it is. Yeah. It's just, I can't really tell you why. Yeah. But I know it is. Makes you feel a certain way. It's a special place, and you know, it's the place, in my opinion, where most of the culture that we think of as South Africa comes from, kind of thing. In some sense, or it's certainly very influential to it. And you know, one thing that got people that I started that like this will be standard in my toolkit now because I've seen what resonates with people. Like people will say, oh, I know Cape Town, I don't know Joburg. And I'll say, yeah, we call it Johannesburg because everyone's hustling to get out so they can go to Cape Town. Right? And people love that because they're like, oh, okay, now I understand. It's a gritty city. People work hard, a lot of industries, probably not as nice as Cape Town. Right.
No, that's a good way to frame it.
But for the kind of person who might be interested in seeing that, they're like, oh shit, I would actually like to see that. What is the city like? Try and imagine it. How factories and you know, all of these things.
Gold mines and what the hell?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely like just take out the boring stuff from what you're gonna say. Right? It's very easy to throw in details where people are like, bro, I don't care how many people live in the city, or you know, something like that, right? Like
giving them all the facts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's really important to just understand who you're delivering it to, and delivering it as cleanly and nicely packaged as possible.
Yeah.
And like I've also been surprised what kind of questions people ask me. I can't think of examples now, but the stuff that I thought was boring and I didn't say, someone would ask me a direct question about that, and I'd be like, okay, for you that's not boring. Yeah. But for most people it would be.
Okay.
So yeah, just leading with the right kind of info for the right person. And you know, like again, if I was to bring it back to the real estate and selling that we do here, I know different types of people, different archetypes, however you break that up, ages, race, whether they're a parent, you know, you have to sell people on different things. And again, I'm not selling insofar as like I'm pushing you to buy something. I'm selling you by giving you the information that's appropriate to you.
Of course, you're not going to tell people that, or a single couple that have no kids or whatever, that there's 10 schools nearby.
100%. You know, like if a young guy comes here, I'll sell him on, you know, you are buying an apartment in this estate, and you know, so many CEOs live here, and this celebrity lives here, and this guy lives here, and this, you know, versus a family where I'll say
selling him the network that he's going to be exposed to.
Exactly. Whereas a family, it's, you know, look at the parks, look at how safe it is. You know, I'll drive them to an area where I know usually there's families walking. Yeah. You know,
kids get together, ride their bikes.
Exactly.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So it's just putting out the appropriate information. Everything I'm telling everyone is true, but not everyone cares about, you know, certain types of info. And I think that is kind of the essence of selling.
But firstly, building that awareness of what you're selling to.
Exactly.
So obviously you wouldn't be able to tell them anything if you knew nothing about Eye of Africa at large. So
sure. And building your understanding of what you're selling. Yeah. And having a coherent idea.
And how it benefits the different demographics that are coming to buy and things like that. That's interesting. But you were saying in my case, it's probably better to narrow that down. So obviously houses, you know, anyone can come and want to buy a house. Maybe Eye of Africa has some sort of a target audience, people looking for lifestyle things. But how narrow do you think I should go? Like, I think I mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned on this first recording or the second recording, but of me potentially marketing to people who wouldn't look at this kind of holiday as their first choice. Yeah. Should I even bother with them?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't, eh?
I wouldn't. I think, you know, an analogy or story or anecdote, whatever, that always stuck with me was when Amazon started, they were an online bookstore. Okay. That's all they were. Yeah. And once they dominated that space, then they said, oh, we also sell DVDs. Okay. Once they dominated that space, you know, they slowly start adding, but they only added things once what they did was unlock. Yeah. So I think for you, it's probably going to be a case of, this is just what I would imagine, be a case of young, adventurous, Western, people who have interests in seeing different places. Yeah. Right. And I don't know quite what you would do to target that, you know, maybe people who follow nature pages and, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that once you have a very good track record of, you know, I've done 10 tours with 10 different people, they were all happy, this is what they had to say. Now other people will say, okay, well, you know, those people were all 25 and 30 and whatever, but this guy seems like he knows what he's doing. He seems flexible. He seems like he's willing to do what we want to do. Let's take a chance.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I envision that it will
that
grow.
You would grow. Okay.
Yeah.
So focus on who I'm truly interested in targeting right now, and
definitely, and
expand
also
as it happens.
And also make it specific so that, you know, if you target an advert at 10,000 people, and one of those people reads that and it really, really, really resonates with them, that deal's as good as done, right? If you've said, are you 28, do you love nature, you want to get out, you don't want to see touristy places, like define that so specifically that when it comes across the right person, they are already sold.
Deal,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then how would you go about generating leads from, let's say, Instagram, for example? Because not everyone's going to DM you. You might get a few likes here and there. Would you recommend maybe approaching all the people that have liked the post or whatever that you put out there and DMing them as like, hey, so you liked it? Do you want to hear more about it? Or is that too overbearing?
It's a good question, and frankly, I don't really know.
It's a tough one, eh? Because if you kind of, from what you were saying earlier about being too eager to sell, is also a problem.
I think there's definitely a balance to strike, and I would say that probably when the right person sees it, they'll reach out to you, and it'll be, you know, again, like it's sold itself. And I think that by the time a person actually reaches out to you, all you're going to have to do is give them the information, and once they feel confident, then they'll book it.
Then it's done. Yeah. Okay.
So I think in terms of outreach, probably wouldn't be worthwhile. I would say just get a page that's clean, coherent, describes exactly what you do, and then start trying different audiences, targeting different audiences.
Okay. Let's see where that goes.
I think we need to start calling it.
Yeah, let's
I know for a fact we need to start calling it, but this was sick. I really enjoyed this.
That was a nice one.
I really value being able to put my thoughts into order, because like you have this knowledge, but you really need to get it captured down. Yeah. So thanks for driving this, bro.
No worries, dude. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and being willing to do the podcast and that.
100%.
It's been a lot of fun. I think I've got a lot of things to go back to the drawing board and kind of restructure the way I was thinking initially.
That's cool, bro. But I mean, it's of course, bro. And I mean, it's all an experiment at the end of the day. Yeah. So take your feedback and, you know, change what you can change.
Rinse and repeat, basically.
Yeah, test the hypotheses.
100%.
Clap for the...
Alrighty. There you go. Cheers, brother.